tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition from all over the hills surrounding Los Angeles.
Sounds like some Gulf of Tonkin scenario.
That led the way for them to make it proper to round up all the Japanese people. This is how they managed to do that. They didn't call it terrorism then, but it's the same idea. Years ago, when I was in high school, we would go over the history books, and many things in the history book contradicted what my father had taught me about World War II. He was in Europe in World War II. And he would give a different story of the way things happened. And I had a neighbor who was a German immigrant who had served in the German army, and him and my father were friends. And they would discuss things, and they both agreed on what had happened, and it was contrary to the history book. So I mentioned this to my history teacher. Well, why is it that the veterans on both sides are telling me a different story than the history book? And the reply from the history teacher was, history is who writes it.
Well, you know, it's funny you mention that, because I have the exact same situation, because my dad, growing up, told me, you know, things about the Kennedy assassination that made you have red flags, because the TV was telling you a completely different scenario. And our history books, and especially what's being taught to our children in school, try to find Nikola Tesla in a history book at a high school and see what luck you have.
Right. Yeah, they took advantage of him pretty well and buried his memory.
We're going to do at some point a broadcast on Nikola Tesla, because that story is one of my favorite. I mean, people are unfamiliar with it. You can go to the internet and get a lot of information. But this gentleman was attempting to give the world free electricity, and I actually called the patent office, and a lot of his patents had disappeared. But we'll get into that on another time. You shipped out our toys for us, and we wanted to thank you again for doing that, Dave.
I'm glad it worked out well.
Is there anything else you'd like to add today?
No, just like to thank you guys for the job you're doing.
When do you think the bailouts will end?
I've got kind of a slanted look at this bailout. Probably contrary or different than anybody else you'll talk to. What I'd like to see is no bailout, but for a different reason. If there's no bailout, I think Ford will manage to remain successful, and GM and Chrysler will go under. This is what I'd like to see. GM led the way in screwing over the consumer, and they deserve to go. And Chrysler's not even a car company anymore. It's a bunch of investors that buy a bunch of stuff and put cars together. So I'd like to see Ford come out of this as the only American automaker.
Well, I agree with you on one thing. I'd like for us to be bailed out of the bailouts.
Such close scrutiny and such a comparatively small amount of money is interesting compared to what they gave to the banks and AIG.
Yeah, and got the audacity to say that the government, of all people, will appoint a car czar to watch over how they spend money, when, you know, our government's the most incompetent handling of money in the history of the world.
And like I mentioned earlier here, the government just gave AIG another $10 billion earlier this week. It was a very small article, very little said about it, and here only another another 4 or 5 to it. And we've been talking about it for over, a month now in Congress.
Well, they're indoctrinating the American people to accept this as normal. Oh, another bailout? Oh, just $10 billion? Oh, just $50 billion? Well, that's normal. I see it every day. You know, it's okay. They're taking care of us. It's going to be fine, even though I go to the grocery store and I come out, I spend $50 and I've got a half a bag of groceries. Everything's fine. No one's working. Everyone part-time. Everyone can't mow yards and wash cars for a living in America. We don't produce anything. It's amazing.
That's right. You got it. That's the way it's working out.
Well, I want to thank you so much, and feel free to call back again.
Okay, Karen. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We said we was going to comment just a little bit on the unrest that's going on in Greece, and it's spreading around to some of the other countries. You had a couple things to say on that. I mean, we might be seeing this coming to a neighborhood near you.
One interesting point my brother Jim had yesterday was You know, in the media we see all the protests being blamed on the death of one individual, a protester who was shot, but we don't dive into, well, why was that person protesting to begin with? I mean, that's the root of the issue here. It's not the individual protester in Greece being shot. Is our mainstream media, again, they always try to point us in the wrong direction, cover up what's really going on.
Something I wanted to comment on real quick that's not been in the news, and that is up to 90%. This is Natural News, December 2nd, 2008. Mike Adams, a great website, very informative on the quality of our food and genetically modified food, that kind of thing. Up to 90% of the infant formula sold in the United States may be contaminated with trace amounts of melamine, the toxic chemical linked to kidney damage, according to recent tests. The FDA test results, which the agency hid from the public and only released after the Associated Press filed a lawsuit. We got another phone call. We're going to have to make it quick, but we want to get them in here. Hey, you're on the Real News.
Hello.
Hey.
I just want to call and share some thoughts with your radio people there. I'm driving down 77.
All right, go ahead.
I just picked you up on the radio here.
Okay, we got about 3 minutes. They're yours. Go to it.
Yes, what I'd like to see this country do is let's make this a purpose for our men and women who's dying over in Iraq. Let's make a deal with Iraq to buy their oil at a reasonable price. Let's send geologists over to explore and find more oil for them. But let's set a base price of maybe the $50 a barrel. Seems like that's working for us, keeping our oil under $2 and gas under $2 a gallon here. We would buy their oil, and the only people that could buy this oil would be our country and our supporters of the war. Then let's go into that country, turn around and spend the money that we're buying oil from them, let them buy goods from us, you know, be a trade thing so that we could open up our mills here in the Carolinas again, set minimum wages for skilled labor around $50 an hour. This minimum wage thing's a joke anyway. Nobody can earn, keep families up for $6 an hour. I run 2 corporations. I understand what it costs to run businesses. I've met payrolls for 44 years. But if we was to go in and make a deal with Iraq to buy their oil, our allies buy their oil, but nobody else, they could sell it and lock it in at a fair market price, like which is now around $50. And then we go into their country, put a new infrastructure in, build new cities for them, and every brick and nail would have to come from either our country or one of our allies that's helped us in the war effort.
Hey, I want to hold on for me. I want to thank you for calling. We've only got a minute to close. If you're in this area, feel free to call back again next week. But we've only got a minute left to close the show. But I do appreciate you calling.
All right, thanks for listening to me.
Thank you.
I'll see you later.
Every week we do a poll, and this week on our poll, Hypocrite of the Week, President Bush. As Brian said, worst president ever. Everyone that refuses to stand up for real freedom. Those that refuse to treat our elderly fairly, as Mr. Anderson explained. Government for continuing these insane bailouts. And Pentagon for its obvious preparing for martial law. And the winner is President Bush. As Brian stated, worst president ever. Again, next week, our guest is going to be Iraq Veterans Against the War. She will be joining us. This is an Iraq veteran that was deployed in Iraq. She's going to shed some light on actually what's been happening over there. On the 27th, we will have Jason Burmas, 2 days after Christmas. He will be our guest. And until next week, this is Farron, Brian, Jim, and Ty's not with us today. He's down at WDSL, getting ready for the parade there in advance, saying, God help us all.